Hey, this is DJ Straight coming to you live from Praise in the Closet. And before I even get started, if you're on Facebook, go ahead and share. If you're on YouTube, hit subscribe. And because we have a very exciting show today, and like I said on yesterday, for Black History Month, I wanted to do something special. I did not want to go into the books and just read about people who made significant impact on our lives. I wanted to talk to people that I knew personally or that I had heard of or had some mention of. And so today, listen, before we get started, we have a whole lineup of great shows on this week. And you can also go on our website, WGMLB.com, hit listen live and hear great inspirational music. Right now, what's playing is Pastor Ralph Jennings and the RDJ Ensemble, Just a Little Talk with Jesus. So you'll hear gospel, you'll hear classic gospel inspiration, you'll hear rap, you'll hear all kind of things on WGMLB.com. If it's positive, we got you covered. So today, I am in my second interview with our Black History Month guest. And on the flyer, it said that Miss Glennis Durham was from Lunenburg County, Virginia. And I'm like, what? Okay, we're going to talk about Lunenburg County, and we're going to talk about just, her upbringing and various things. And like I said, I wanted to talk to people that was tangible. But what we won't do in this interview today, we don't have to talk about how we barely made it, how we barely survived, because Miss Glennis Durham has a great testimony, and all the while her faith was in God. So without further, as they say in the church, without further ado, or they say further ado, I am bringing on as my special guest today, Grandma Glennis. Glennis. Okay, I think you have to unmute your own microphone. It looks like your mic is muted. There we go. We're unmuted, and welcome to Praise from the Closet with DJ Straight. Grandma Glennis, how are you today?
I am fine. I'm very fine. I'm blessed.
You're looking good in that red.
Well, thank you.
Yes. So I wanted to introduce you, and I wanted to interview you today because I've had the pleasure of hearing you share some of the stories, and in all of the stories that you shared, you've always kept a positive attitude, a positive mentality, regardless of what was going on. So tell me, what and where is Lunenburg County, Virginia?
Lunenburg County is about 45 minutes out of Richmond, and it's surrounded by Mecklenburg, and I can't think. It's been so long, I can't think of a county where South Hill and all that is.
So how was it growing up in Lunenburg? Tell us about your family. Did you have sisters and brothers? Tell us about a little bit of your family of growing up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was born in Virginia, and then we moved to West Virginia, and I think I must have been 5 or 6 probably when we moved back to Virginia. And I grew up on a farm. I had 5 brothers and 4 sisters. It was 10 of us.
Oh.
And my father was a minister, and we lived on a farm. And living on the farm, I loved it. We ate real food. As I tell everybody, we really ate real food. And we didn't get to go, as people say, uptown because it was segregated, but we never really thought about it because my parents kind of put a barrier there where we didn't have to deal with it because we lived on the farm. We lived on, my dad's name was on it. He owned it. And that was something that very few Black people own their own farm. So we lived on our own place. So we got to go to school when school started. And really, we had played with each other. We didn't have a lot of, people running in and out. We played with each other. We helped with the crops. And on Sundays, we went to church and came home. We had our own ball team. Dad and the boys would play against mother and the girls. And then on the fifth Sunday each month, when they didn't have Sunday school, they had something called Baptist Training Union, that all the churches come together. Mm-hmm. We got to go to Petersburg where my aunt lived, and we got ice cream, because when I came along, we weren't allowed to go in the stores for anything.
Wow.
In fact, people weren't allowed inside and out the stores. Even if you wanted to buy something out the store, the parents went in the store. Even shoes, they would go in the stores and bring the shoes home, but you couldn't try the shoes. You couldn't go in the stores like you can now and try the shoes or anything. But I never thought about anything, and I never thought about us going to separate schools. The blacks went to one school, whites went to another, and we didn't start riding the school bus until you got in high school. We walked to school.
Okay. Wow. So back up for a minute. You said that you lived on a farm. What kind of products did you have on a farm? Because you said that you guys didn't have to buy anything because your father was a farmer.
Yeah, he raised all vegetables. He raised the meat or anything we didn't buy, because he had hogs, he had cows. And believe it or not, we ate rabbits, and because they hunted, and on the place was a fish pond, and we just didn't have to. And you know what? When we sit down, we didn't even buy bread from the store. My mother made fresh bread every day, and we would laugh. My sister and I laughed about it, because even going to school, we carried homemade bread and stuff from home for lunch, because they didn't really get lunch rooms till later on, when I got up in grades. And then it was like, you still carried your lunch from home. And some kids would eat they had kids that couldn't bring lunch and stuff in, so the ladies and things would make pots of soup and stuff so that they could have lunch. And then when you got into a certain grade, it was an honor. They would let you come in. They would let you come in and help fix the lunch. And that was a privilege. You look forward to your turn when you could go in the cafeteria and in the little kitchen. It wasn't a big cafeteria like they got now. But you know what? Speaking of school, I think is what they'll, every day before we started school with "My country 'tis of thee, the Lord's Prayer, and holy, holy, holy." And I think that's what the kids are missing so much now. Mm-hmm. Because even then you had kids that my father was a minister too. And so when we sit down at home, the grace was said at every meal. And you had to, each one of us had to say a Bible verse. So we knew, but we had kids that came along with us that didn't get that in home. Like kids now, a lot of kids now don't get that in the home, so they get it when they go to church and things. And now they get it at the church, but then you got it at school, because, and the teachers, most of them, you knew your teachers. You went to church with your teachers.
Wow.
Now, my pastor was the 6th grade teacher. The lady that played the organ in the church was the principal of the school. And not only that, like the saying go, it takes a village to raise a child. Mm-hmm. Well, if you did something, like we didn't do it, because if you did something and somebody would tell your parents, they would know it before you got home.
And then did they have telephone? Did they call on the phone? And tell
No,
them?
people walked. People
Really?
would walk and I don't know how they would tell, and when they did get phones, they had a party line. So if your phone rung, everybody's phone rung, and everybody could listen in on the conversation.
Oh,
Even though
like
they
Betty
had even though everybody's phone had a different little ring, you could pick up the phone and listen in on somebody else's conversation. And it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And I thank God for my bringing up and for the growing up the way I did, because and even like I said, even when we went to school, it was 10 of us. So, and I saw something the other day that made me think about it because it was 10 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And my father he'd buy one set of books. He started with the oldest with a set of books, two
Okay.
oldest with books. And you know what? They would pass the books on down because we were one right behind the other. But a lady said the other day when she went to the store, and the girl said something about she was glad they got rid of paper bags. And the lady said, well, we used to cover our school books with paper bags. And we
Mm-hmm.
did make book covers out of our paper bags so you could keep that book nice and clean and pass it down.
Wow. So let me ask you, you said that if you guys you couldn't go in the store to get your shoes, your parents had to go, but what if the shoes didn't fit? Did they let you bring them back?
You know, I don't remember. Now, I doubt if you could come back. You just you passed them on around to somebody else because
Okay.
then it was people helped more than they didn't mind. If you got something and you couldn't use it, it was always somebody
That
that,
could use
but they had more kids than they did now. And it was always somebody that could use what you didn't use and things. And no, even when I got to be a teenager, I didn't want anything from the store because everything, almost like it is now, you go into the store and everything is just in different sizes. They look just alike. And I never wanted to dress like everybody else. So um, having a farm, the feed for the cows and pigs and things came
Mm-hmm.
in bags, cloth bags. And you could pull the strings off of them and wash them and make things out of them. So I made my own clothes
Okay.
when I became
Okay.
a teenager. Out
Because I
of
was
what
going
they
to ask you about
flowers,
that.
out of what they call flour sacks and seed sacks.
Okay.
And
Okay.
my mother made quilts and everything. We really didn't shop that much because my mother was great at making things for us, underskirts or whatever we needed. She made them out of
Yeah,
different.
that's great. Now you said that your parents had five girls and five boys. Did the girls work on the farm as well as the young men?
Yeah,
As
we
well?
helped with, okay, we helped, but not, okay, like when time came to plant tobacco, we could walk down and drop the plants down for them to go. My brothers would come along and plant them in the ground and stuff. But as far as working behind the plows and things, that's what the boys did. We
Okay.
mostly, we could help with but when time came to pull the tobacco, the boys did that. But you know what? And they would the farmers would help each other. Like if Monday and Tuesday would be my father's day to pull his tobacco. Then Wednesday and Thursday, him and the boys would go somewhere else and help somebody else pull theirs. And people just were nice and pitched in and helped.
Wow.
And
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't want to cut you off.
no, but it was just different. And even with the vegetables and things that you grew, people would. Well, my father was always carrying somebody, something. He always had enough. With 10 kids, he always had enough to share with somebody else.
And that's what I was getting ready to say. Ladies and gentlemen, this is DJ Straight celebrating Black History Month with Grandma Glennis. Now, you know, with 10 children, what you're saying so far, it doesn't sound like poverty or anything. It sounds like a lot of love. It sounds like an abundance of it. It sounds like an overflow. So what about your teenage years? Because I think when I spoke with you that at one time you were in Washington D.C. Tell us how you ended up in Washington D.C. and as far as a career, and how did you come into that was different than your childhood?
Oh, it was a lot different. Okay, in my teenage years, I was in Virginia, and that's the only time I ever went to the movie. One time we got to go to the movie, and that was to see Three Coins in a Fountain. But we didn't
Oh,
go up, down, or anything. And like teenagers, we we walked back and forth from school. And this is funny. One day, I'm the oldest girl, and I had my sister next to me. The rule was you couldn't do anything until the oldest did it, and I wasn't interested in like my sister under me. She was always out there, but um, she got interested in a little boy at school, and we, like I said, we walked home, and one day they decided, my cousin, her, and all us walking along together with these little boys, but we had to pass my grandfather's house, and he's sitting on his porch smoking his pipe, and we
uh-huh.
passed his house. And he didn't even speak to us. He didn't say anything. He got in his car, and we figured we didn't know where he was going. He went down to my mother's house to tell her that we were walking with those little boys. And so she started, she came up the road, and some guys was building a house. And,
Mhm.
and we thought little girl, young girls, they were laughing and carrying on, and we thought they were laughing at us, and everything. But what it was, she was coming up the road with a switch because we were late coming home.
Oh my gracious.
And my grandfather was sitting there when we got home because our house was back in off down on the farm. And he's sitting there with his legs crossed, with smoking his pipe, because he, instead of picking us up or saying something, that's why I said it took a village. Everybody could correct you if they saw you, even in church, if they saw you not doing something,
Mhm.
they could correct you and things. And it made a difference. And then I feel like when I left Virginia and went to Washington, D.C., it was the old story like the country mouse going to the city mouse vice versa going to the country. It was different because you know what, even though, and I'm being for real, even though we were segregated in things in
Mhm.
the South, I never felt that until I really went to Washington, D.C. I never even really thought about it because our farm was between two white families.
Uh-huh.
And we talked to them, we played with them, we were friends. We knew they went to different schools and things, but we just never,
You
and
didn't
things
know.
were happening. But like I said, my mother and father was the barrier between us because we didn't ever had to deal with actually that until we left home. And then
I think it was a shocker.
when I moved to Washington D.C., and then when I finally got when I did a real job, started working in I think '66. That was when I started. And that's when I really kind of knew because at that time, certain jobs women weren't supposed couldn't have and weren't supposed to be doing, like driving the bus, working at the post office, doing construction and stuff. That was called a man's world.
Wow.
And so when you went out in '66 to do certain things, they said you were invading a man's world. And not only were you invading a man's world, but you were invading where white people used to hold the jobs. So when you went out in the '60s and '70s work, early '70s of work, you were invading two worlds, the white world and the man's world. And they did not make it easy for you. And government jobs were the same way. You couldn't even really, when I first went to Washington, we weren't even allowed to get government jobs. And not even doing it, as we said. you couldn't even be a bathroom technician, which would have been cleaning the bathrooms because they were even doing that.
So when you came up, what was your first job? Excuse me one second. One of our viewers said that they don't have any volume. If you're on YouTube, you have to go down to connect where it says with your volume. Come down a little bit where the space is, and you'll see a like a speaker button, and your volume will be there. Make sure you're not muted. But so Grandma Glennis, and we're gonna get to that term, Grandma Glennis. We're gonna get to that term in a minute. But so what was your first job, and how was coming to Washington D.C. from Lunenburg County such a shock? What did you experience?
Oh, you know what? My first job wasn't in Washington D.C. because
Okay.
when I graduated high school at 18, my sister and I, we had a cousin in New York, and she had said that we could come to New York for the summer because people were going to play, like my brothers when they were in high school, they would go away for the summer and work all summer and somewhere in Connecticut, and then they would get paid at the end of the summer and come back home. And people were always saying they were going away, and so Hasseltine and I decided we wanted to go to New York because people were talking about getting live-in jobs in New York for the summer and stuff. So we went on the train, spent all day in the train station because we didn't know it had 2 floors. And then Hasseltine, my first job I went out on, the lady said, she says, my girl just quit and I need my mattress turned. And I said, I don't turn mattress. So that was the end of that job. So then Hasseltine had a job out on Fire Island, and she knew somebody out there that wanted somebody to help her.
Her mattress.
I went out there, and my first thought was, these people ain't got no clothes on. And we worked, there was quite a few people out there working, black people. They were like babysitters and things so that people could be free. And every Friday or Saturday night, we had a little cabin we would meet in and talk about them. But I see and I laughed in the later years because we didn't know it was a nudist camp until I read in a novel in later years that we had been.
Oh wow.
We had been out on this nudist camp for the summer. But no, when I first came to Washington, I got a job at the hospital, and it was washing dishes, and I never forget it because they had a great big machine that they would put the plates in and send it through. And my job was to catch the plates. And that lady that was doing that was hateful. She was hateful, just flaming flags. And so she turned the steam up on that place so hot that I couldn't get it. And so, anyway, and then that's where I met my ex-husband.
So let me ask you, did you apply for that job, or did you just walk in and say, hey, I want to work, or did you actually have to apply for the job?
Yeah, you went in and applied for it, but that was the only job they would give you. You couldn't work up on the floors and things. You could either be they call it housekeeping now, but they call them janitors. Then you could either be a janitor or you could work in the kitchen. And,
okay. Wow.
And dishwashing and stuff. You didn't go around the food and stuff. And it was just, I don't know. And then when I decided, after I got married and I left my husband, that's when I got the job at the post office. And I just know that God gave it to me. Like I asked him today, why did he ask me to do this? But
and you said, yeah.
Anyway, I got the mailman came and I asked him if he knew where I could get a job. And he said, yeah. He said the post office was hiring. I asked him to bring me an application, and he came and he didn't bring it. 2 days he came and he didn't bring it to me, and then he did bring it to me And he gave it to me, and he said, I could tell by older man. He said, I can tell by the way you asked that you didn't want your husband to know that you were asking for this application. And I filled it out and gave it back to him like he said. And I got time to go take the test. And when I went to take the test, it was 3 hours long. I had taken the kids to my sister, and it was 3 hours long. And all of those young people were getting up and going and finishing out and out. And I was the last one. And two of us was in the last two were in there to finish the test. And I knew it was number of God that I made 100 on it. And they called me to work.
So what did you start out doing at the post office? What was your job starting out at the post office?
Sorting the mail and pulling sacks. And you know what? I noticed, I can't say what when I first started, like I said, we kind of invaded a man's world. And so they put us out. A lot of women fill them sacks and pull those sacks down, and you went out looking like you had worked in a coal mine. And the men would come in with white shirts on, looking like they had came from the margin. And they would go home with them white shirts on. And when we went to the superintendent to talk about it, and I know his expression to us was, he got on the loudspeaker and he said, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. And he stayed there. He stayed there because you needed a job, and it was not paying no money. Like I think my first pay, I think it was $2.63 an hour.
Wow! And how heavy were those sacks? Because I mean, approximately how heavy were those sacks? And that was a lot. So you had to be mentally strong to work at the post office as well, not just physically strong.
You had to be mentally strong and spiritually strong to really survive. And I tell anybody, even to this day, I don't know how I know it was God that kept me. And every step, he was in my corner every step. And that's why I won't leave him. I don't care what happened. But, and I often tell him, I know I have worried you to death over my lifetime. I know that I have act like I'm your only child, but I'm not. And I know I'm not. But I give him all the credit, because I'm going to tell you, every step of the way, yeah, it was heavy. It was difficult because, one time, and I don't care, one time when, like I said, I had left my husband and I had the kids. And when I first got the job, they held back, they held 2 weeks in the hole. You worked a whole month before you got paid. And my first check, my ex-husband's mother, the kids' grandmother said, I'll help you by keeping the kids. I let her keep those kids. And I brought home $126, and she asked me for $80 for keeping her own grandkids. And I thought, I can't do that. So
wow.
I said, I would go to the night shift. They had put me on a 3:30 to 12, but my kids were young. My oldest son was only 5. And I had gotten, after that, I had to leave him like in charge while I worked at night. And I would say to him, I'm gonna lay your clothes out in the morning. When I call you, get up, get dressed, and then I'll come home and I'll walk him to where I could see him cross the street to go to school and rush back to the other kids so they wouldn't be in the house by themselves. And I'm gonna tell you, God is good, because I had moved where I was catching 2 buses, and I moved where I could catch 1 bus. And this little old lady came out one morning and she said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Y'all young girls running out here leaving them kids in the house by themselves just for nothing. She said, just that. And I said, lady, I'm not. I'm working. I'm working to take care of my kids. And she said, if that's the case, give me a key to your house and I'll look after your kids. So then she did until I moved. So,
and as you were talking, I went back to think about your childhood, because you said that your dad was a pastor and your parents worked together. So you had a foundation And you said mentally you had to be strong, and that came from your foundation as far as your family coming together and learning how to pray and things of that nature. Now, you did you have to help take care of your siblings, like your oldest son had to take care of his? Did you have to help take care of your siblings?
No, we kind of looked out for each other. No, mother did. Most mother lives after us. We looked out for each other though. You know, we would do what we could, still do whatever we can for each other. We were, and I hate how I put it. We are really, really close. We're like knitted together,
That's
and
great.
you
A
know,
family
whatever
that's
happens to
that's
one
great.
happens to the other, and whatever we can do for one, you do for the other. You know, it's no. And on the time we had to look out. Really, I guess you would say, like, coming up, mother belonged to an organization called the Eastern Star, and daddy
Mhm.
belongs to the Masons. And so when mother would have to go to the meetings, which would last an hour or so, Nathaniel was the oldest. And so
Okay.
she would tell him, like, you look out for the others. And of course, he was bossy. And the rest of us was like, okay, Net's in charge, but how's the team? Net was not telling her what to do. And we laughed because they would always get into it. And at that time, the walls were sheetrock. And
Okay.
we would get into it, and mother would come back and there'd be a hole in the wall.
Who punched the hole in the wall?
House team, her Net, because he was going to make her do, he would say, like we washed dishes and stuff, swept the floor and stuff like that. And he would always try to make her do something. She didn't need him to tell her to do it because mother had already said what else to do. But he always, little short thing, he always thought he was a man, you
Oh,
know.
okay. Because you said you were the oldest. Okay. Okay. So let me
He was,
ask you
he
this
was the
then.
oldest, so he always thought that I'm gonna tell you, you do what I say, you know. Nobody listened to him. But there's stuff just didn't pay him any attention, but House of Tune wasn't gonna let him tell her what to do. Mm.
So, so what about at the post office that you started out as picking up those heavy bags and mail handler? Now, let me jump to this question. How long did you stay at the post office?
20 some years.
So, in your 20 something years, what kind of changes did you see or didn't
Oh,
see?
I did it. I stayed there. I worked a night shift until my kids, all of them got up to a good age, 16, 17, 18. They were one right now. And then I bid it out to be a clerk at the window.
Okay.
And that was God's, I give him credit because I put in 3 bids. And the first bid I wanted was where I could walk to work. And if I didn't get that one, I wanted a second bid where I could catch one bus to work. And
Hmm.
the third one, I didn't know where it was. And the man that was in charge, he came to me and he said, Glennis, he said, um, you didn't get your first bid and you didn't get your second bid. He said, we gave you your third bid because we think you better fitted for that. And I said, okay. I didn't make no fuss over it.
Okay.
And that Saturday, when I was supposed to report out there, my brother and I went looking for the place. It was down this little road, 2-lane road. And I said, okay. It was in Bethesda, West Bethesda. And I said, okay. And then I went home, and over Sunday, Monday, I had laryngitis when I was supposed to report there. And Lord knows, I couldn't find that post office when I went back on that Monday. And
Hmm.
I was there at 6. It was probably 9:30, and I stopped the policeman and told him where I wanted to go. And I couldn't even talk. I had to write. I had laryngitis, so I couldn't talk. And so he just called the superintendent and told him, I got your employee out of here and I'll bring her in. And he did. He tried me there. And when I got there, the superintendent had made a little note and put it up at the window saying, she has laryngitis. And it was in November, and them people were mailing packages. It was time to mail foreign packages, and they
Hmm.
were mailing packages to places I had never heard of. And And this lady that worked beside me, it was two other ladies, only one. The one was white and one was black. And the black lady says, I'm not helping you. She wouldn't help me at all. And the customer, the white lady said she would help me, but this lady was standing in between us. And so the customers would come to the one and they said, they knew what they needed to do. And they said, I'll help you. I'll help you. And they did. And I never will forget it because at Christmas, this one little guy, young man came in and gave me a gift. And in there, he wrote a card saying, you changed my impression of the post office.
Wow.
And I stayed there. And that was, I don't know how many years I stayed there until I did it out to another one.
So, okay, at the post office, because while you were talking, my mind went back to something that you mentioned earlier about growing up. So, at one time, we had a conversation. I heard you say that they had one classroom and they seated you in the classroom according to your complexion. So, were you able to learn that way because everybody was in the same classroom? And while I'm asking you this, listen, we have people on. If you all want to ask Grandma Glennis some questions, just type them in the comment section and I will definitely share them with her because I've been putting comments up as well. But I wanted to ask you, how was that being in the classroom and how were you all seated and could you learn with so many people in the classroom?
You know what? Yeah, they did. They seated you according to who your family was and your complexion in the classrooms. But
Wow.
I tell the kids now when I coming up, my kids and my grandkids and great grandkids, I learned a lot at home. I didn't learn a lot, because the teachers, I found out some of them people that was supposed to be teaching us hadn't finished school themselves, you know. I'm serious. Some of them didn't even, okay, like my French teacher, um, and one of the math teachers, that one math teacher was trying to help another. And okay, at the time they had, we would have, they would go to different schools and they had somebody to represent the school and stuff. And I never forget, they had this one girl, they were two math teachers took all day trying to teach her how to work a problem. And lunchtime came, she still didn't have it because they wanted her, because she had curly hair and she was light skinned. And because of her family, they wanted her to represent the school. And so they would spend all morning trying to help her. And she didn't get it. So at lunchtime, they left the room. My cousin and I, we were in the back of the room because we were about the same complexion.
Uh-huh.
We worked the problem at lunchtime and left it on the board. And when they came back in and they saw the problem had been worked, they wanted us to see if we could help her. And my mother had always said, if you know it and you're good enough to know it, you're good enough to do it.
Yeah, that's a principle.
We erased the problem off the board. And that's when I found out that my cousin was adopted because the teacher got so angry. She told her that she was adopted, that the lady that we thought was her mother wasn't her mother. But it was okay. It turned out that she was sorry for it later, though, because my great aunt made sure she was sorry for it. But
But she couldn't take that back. So hold on. So tell us what your great aunt did. Give us a little secret. Great aunt did.
across the line. But it turned out the lady, her mother had been coming to see her all those years. And so she had, and we just thought the lady, we didn't know who the lady was. But every year before the school, she lived in Baltimore, and she would always bring her clothes for school. And we didn't never ask, I was in high school, probably in 10th grade, when I found out that my cousin was adopted. Because the teacher got so angry because we wouldn't, neither one of, back, and I'm not now, I guess we were taught that you don't have to come second to none.
That's right. That's right.
You know, you are who you are, and get as that overused mother used to say to us, she drilled it in us, get it in your head. What you get in your head, they can't take away from you.
That's right.
And I try to teach my kids the same thing. Be yourself and get it in your head, and don't look at the person from the inside, outside. Look at the heart. If the heart is okay, then they okay. But if that inside ain't right, then you don't need to be bothered.
Wow.
Because you can't change a person, and you can't make them be what you want them to be.
That is great advice. So I see your name as Grandma Glennis, and I was told that your house was a community house, that children love coming to your house, even if some of your own children weren't there. The neighborhood children love to come from your house because I can see that you are retired and you're looking well. But what is it about those neighborhood children that draws them to your house?
I don't know, because I don't think I'm that nice. I don't know, because I just frank with them. You know, if they do something that I don't like, okay, even like when I was doing foster care, I would tell
Mhm.
the kids when they come in my house, I don't have any law, I don't have no hard, fast rules. You at home. And you don't know, I don't have no rules, but if you do something I don't like, I'm gonna let you know the first time. And
Mhm.
I have to tell you the second time, you got consequences coming to you. You're not gonna get by with it the second time. And as one social worker told me, I was strict but consistent. She said, your kids do better because you are strict with them, but you're consistent. And that's what kids need. You know, you can't tell them, like when I was going to taking a class and they wanted to um, critique the shows that come on TV. And I said, I won't do it because how in the world you gonna sit down and laugh with your kids with some of the stuff that's on TV, but you
Right.
telling them it's wrong. You sending them, you know, two messages. You can't
That's right.
say you can't laugh at this one day or 1 minute, and then next minute you're gonna tell them, well, you shouldn't say it or you shouldn't do this. And so I guess that's just I'm old fashioned.
Well, you said you were consistent. So, Grandma Glennis, I have certainly enjoyed speaking with you with so much wisdom and knowledge. But let me ask you this. What are, or if you can think of the three things that come to your mind that you are most thankful for as far as from as a child unto where you are now?
The three things I'm thankful most of all for my bringing up, and uh, and first of all I thank God because I gave my life to God when I was 9 years old, and I'm not, and I
Great.
thank Him that I was brought up in a home that my father, you know, um, and you know what, I'm thankful that I'm here today because that didn't have to be, and at one time I didn't think I would be.
Hmm.
Because at one time when I was younger, I had 5 operations in 5 years, and
Wow.
and today I tell anybody, God, even coming, I live in Washington State now, and when my daughter-in-law asked me to come to Washington State, I thought, oh my goodness, and it took a while. And I talked to God about it and finally. Because when I left the post office, I had said I had always wanted a daycare, and I had started my daycare. And it
Okay.
was really where I had kids, and it was getting where I wanted it to be when she asked me to come. And I'm like, okay, Lord, here you go again. But you know what? I think, and I followed his wisdom. My parents were living at the time, so that was a hard decision to make, but I prayed about it. And when I
Mhm.
felt at ease, I took my granddaughter I was raising, I got on the train, and I came to Washington. I thank God I did because if I had stayed on the East Coast, I would not be here today because
Amazing.
no, I wouldn't. And I just said, you know, it was I all my life. I think Ain't no thing I know. Even when things, though we sit down and we say, this is the way I want my life to go, this is what's going to happen and everything. But I said, whatever, everything that has happened, God was in charge and is in charge.
Mhm.
And I have a saying that says, as you said to my mother, you know what? When something bad happened in my life, if I stand still long enough, a blessing or lesson gonna come out of it, and
All
sometimes
right.
both, because it was God's will, and I still follow His will. Whatever happens is okay with me because He's in charge. And when I was in the second grade, a teacher gave me the surrender prayer, give me the courage to change what I can. It says the serenity prayer. It
Mhm.
says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's the way I just said, because things happen. Even like I was telling somebody else, you get married and you think, oh, this is going to last forever. Your parents, like my parents, had a long marriage and they showed that they loved each other. So when I got married, I figured mine would last too, but it didn't, thank God.
But he didn't let that stop you. Yeah.
you know, and I'm serious because you know what? And at the time I got a divorce, and um, churches really didn't support you getting divorces. Like one lady said to me, you should have stayed there and prayed to God for him to, change him. Well, God can change him, but he wouldn't be changing him for me because you know what I felt like, I belong to God and he want me to be better than this. And I did.
That's a whole subject within itself. The church messing in people's business when it comes to marriages and things of that nature. But I have certainly enjoyed speaking with you on today because I have learned so much. Because all as you were talking, the only thing I could think about was you had so much to be grateful for, and a lot of that was with your upbringing, like you said. You had a mother and a father in the house with 10 children. You didn't even know about racism or anything that you didn't experience until you came. But you came from Lunenburg County to Washington, New York, Washington D.C., and Washington State. And one thing you said that really stuck out to me is that if you did not come to Washington State, you don't know where you would be at this time. That's an awesome testimony. So listen, folks, here you have it on WGMLB Praise from the Closet. You have a witness, a living testimony that one, if you obey God, that all of your steps will be ordered by him if you listen and pay attention and seek his face. And then two, you have a single mother who did everything that she needed to do to raise her children until they were old enough to do the things they did. And then she picked up and she moved. She had a job, she picked up and she moved. And she looks just as happy, as content and articulate. If you want peace in your life, be obedient and do the things you're supposed to do. So I want to give Grandma Glennis, and I know you have grandchildren and great grandchildren, and you have some that you raised. So that's a term of endearment, that Grandma Glennis, because I was told everybody calls you that. Everybody calls you Grandma Glennis, and that's a term of endearment because you are stern, but you're stern in love. And I wanted to give you any parting words before I make a couple of announcements. Do you have anything else that you want to add or say?
No, I just tell anybody, trust God. If you don't try to live your life without him. Don't. That's the worst thing you could do is try to get around him and live your life without him.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. So listen, folks, this is DJ Straight with our guest, Glennis Grandma Durham from Lunenburg County to New York, Washington, D.C., and now in Washington State, looking healthy. So we have another show on tonight, Nutrition Nuggets. That comes on every Tuesday. Tonight is going to be at 6:45, and the subject is going to be takeout food. You can find it here on our YouTube channel, DJ Straight, or you can go on our on our Facebook pages. Also, coming up on Thursday at this same place at 5 p.m., we have the CEOs of Strawberry Radio. Now, I know on that station they love quartet music. They have a variety, but DJ Wonderboy and his wife, DJ Felicia Strawberry, they got something to say, and you will be surprised. I have learned a lot just from talking with them. And then hold your seats on Friday at 8:15 and continuing our Black History Month. We have Psalmist Christie at 8:15 p.m. She's going to come and she's actually going to sing and play and give us some worship. And she's also going to talk about a book that she has in writing. So don't go too far from your computer or your cell phone or any of your devices, because Praise from the Closet, Wonderful Gospel Music Lovers Buffet, we are on the move, and we can only be on the move with your help. Go on our website, WGMLB.com. We have many shows of opportunities that people can come in and help and volunteer. So one more time, Grandma Glennis, I thank you for sharing your wisdom, your story. That's an awesome testimony, because what I like is you didn't come on here, oh, woe is me, and we didn't have, it was a whole month. You came on here and you just talked about joy that you had. It wasn't easy, but you talked about the joy and you still have that same joy. So thank you for coming on. And until later on today at 7 o'clock, folks, this is DJ Straight, and we are signing off and Praise from the Closet, PFTC, Praise from the Closet. And we have more shows coming up even next week, the whole month of February. We are doing Black History Month with people that are tangible, that should be in the history books, but they're not. So therefore, we're giving them that platform, the opportunity to come on. Thank you all for tuning in today.